Thank you so much, Victoria. Yeah, we'll do a double act. I've got this mic. Well, welcome one and all to this next session on how to enable change, where we're going to look further at the specific perspectives of certain stakeholders, what really they're adding to change, and whilst each of them will wear their own hats from industry and from finance, from workers, communities, from research and so on, I want to really lean into listening to one another. Because if we want systems change, we need much more systemic collaboration. It happens ad hoc, but we really need to be listening to other perspectives and leaning in to not just what we have to offer and what we want to offer, but what others need from us. So delighted, I'll do short intros because the panelists will have a minute to intro themselves and what they're up to. Delighted that Jamie Rusby from Velux is joining us with an industry hat on, but I know all of our panelists wear many, many hats. Aditi Maheshwari from IFC, wearing a finance hat, but again, many hats. Majed El Arwari, who's on the non-exec board of CESC. I've got that right now. It's not CESC. I'll let you tell the audience what it's all about. And Alejandra Rivera, who's from IHRB, the Institute for Human Rights and Business. So, we'll be talking about the responsibility of all of us as stakeholders, wearing all of our hats, to really achieve this breakthrough change that we want in the built environment. I'd love you to each just do a 60-second intro of yourself, your organization, and specifically lean into how your organization is enabling, from its perspective, market transformation. Jamie, first to you.
Yes, hello everyone. Great to be here. I'm Jamie. I am the Group Sustainability Director at Velux, and we are a manufacturer of roof windows for the residential and commercial sector. So we're into daylight and fresh air through the roof. We have a sustainability strategy, but I think that's probably the way we're enabling change primarily today. And it sits in our decarbonisation strategy, where we've set out targets to reduce our operational emissions by 100% by 2030 and to halve our value chain emissions. So I think that's where it really sits in the materials that go into our products, the glass, the plastic, the aluminium, the other metals, decarbonising those materials by working with our suppliers in our supply chain.
Wonderful, thank you, Jamie. Aditi, over to you.
Thanks so much. Aditi Maheshwari from the International Finance Corporation. I work as part of the leadership team in the Climate Business Department. For those that don't know, the International Finance Corporation, it's the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. We work in emerging markets to ensure and mobilize private investment in economic development. Accelerating finance for green buildings has been a core part of IFC's own climate strategy. We have invested over $5.5 billion in this sector and have been working to mobilize and accelerate broad adoption of green building standards across the board through the introduction of EDGE, a green building certification standard that was designed to be accessible to all segments of the market in different countries. And since it was launched in 2015, it has been adopted in over 80 countries and covering $43 billion worth of floor space. That I think is about 40 million square meters since 2015. So there is broad uptake, and that's what IFC is doing right now in terms of market transformation. We also work with heavy industry and decarbonization in different sectors, but I'm going to focus on green buildings here.
Super, wonderful. And a great stat from IFC, 24.7 trillion opportunity in green buildings in emerging markets before 2030. So let's get moving. Majed, over to you.
Yeah. Hello, I'm happy to be here first. I'm Majed El-Hawari. I'm here representing Heritage University. CESC, Center of Excellence Smart Construction. So I'm non-executive board member of the CESC. CESC has been founded since 2 years from Heritage University. It's a kind of partnership between the industry and the academia. So we can move faster with changing the mindset, the culture, the awareness, and research project related to the construction industry. The pillars of the CESC, we are talking about technology, we are talking about innovation, and we are talking about the sustainability concept. For me, I'm representing a non-executive board member because I'm representing the industry in the CISC. My full-time job, I'm the CIO of AGC Group in the UAE. So we are one of the founders of the CISC. CISC has been founded with primarily four founding partners. One of them is AGC Construction in the UAE. So we are doing a kind of bridging between the academia and the industry for the research. So I'm wearing two hats, the industry and supporting the CISC and teaching with the Heritage University in technology and innovation and sustainability.
Great intros, everyone. This sets you up for talking to them after the next break. Alejandra from IHRB.
Thank you. I'm Alejandra Rivera from the Institute for Human Rights and Business. So we advocate for human rights in different industries, and specifically at the Built Environment Program, where I work as Global Program Manager. We advocate for human rights or incorporating these principles into the way we think, we design, finance, plan, and construct our cities and the built environment specifically. So when we speak of change on this, I can think of two ways. So one, we need to accelerate decarbonization, but how do we do that also in a just and inclusive way? So that's the social dimension that we bring on, and we focus on this concept of just transition in the built environment using three leverages. So first, strengthening the evidence base, the case for the just transition, and we do that through action research in 8 cities globally. Second, we also work with local stakeholders in these 8 cities and many others around the world, also facilitating the building of narratives and visions of what the just transition really means for these people locally. And third, getting the message to the key stakeholders in the industry in different sectors in the cities. That's it in a nutshell.
One wonderful nutshell, and I'm going to pause, and the benefit of going last is you get to go first on the next bit. So the key question here, the exam question, is how do we enable a future where no building is inefficient, unhealthy, or contributes to the emissions problem at all? So that's our exam question for today. Can you go a little bit deeper? Because I want to stay with you for a bit. We heard some fantastic speeches earlier on the need to implement ready-baked industry kind of solutions and build the kind of political buy-in, but we've heard probably too little about workers, about communities, about some of the really critical actors for this change to really spread societally. So can you go a little bit deeper, Alejandro, on some of the ways we can actually achieve that transition, that exam statement, kind of what needs to happen, and talk a little bit about this, the research, the action-based work that you're doing on the ground to bring it to life.
Yeah, thank you so much for posing the question. I think it's very important to speak about the how. I think so far we are pretty much in line of what we need to do as far as the changes, the carbonization, and on the why, but the how is the key question. So I think for us is really key that each stakeholders recognizes their key role and acknowledges how important it is, like their function. And because the behavior of each stakeholder, each sector, really sends these signals of change to the others. So for example, the national government having a national policy framework, like having a good national adaptation plans of the policies of the carbonization roadmaps, and that we're doing in some countries. Also leading from example with the procurement requirements, the public procurement, having efficient agencies to implement and enforce these policies. So that creates a demand signal to the industry. So now on the other hand, on businesses, we have a lot of net zero commitments, but the issue, the challenge is usually how does that translate into internal policies or standard operating procedures to really create change beyond CSR or ESG. On the role of the civil society, I think is also very important, which is actually all of us. We tend to think of civil society as a different sector, something separate from us, but at the end we're all consumers, we are tenants, we pay rent, we are the consumers of the built environment, of energy. So one, we can change behavior with our options, with our attitudes, if we have the option to. In the global south, not so many people have the option to change behavior. But then when that's not the case, we can also create change by advocating for the democratization of solutions, to be able to be part of the change, and to leverage the size and the scale of civil society to scale those solutions as well.
Huge power there. Workers and communities not often in the room, so we've perhaps got some room to do reaching out. It sounded like you were throwing over a little bit to industry, so Jamie, I'm going to bring you in on actually what do we need to do to really achieve this transition? What does industry need to offer, and what do you need from others?
Thank you. I was just writing down an answer to that.
Excellent.
No, that's good. No, but I think you put it so well to say we've had many net zero commitments, but how does that translate into standard operating procedures and policies? And of course, that is really where the action is. And I think one way we can accelerate that is by talking about 2030 all the time. So I think we've set a target to halve our value chain emissions by 2030 from a 2020 baseline. I can tell you that focuses minds on how to get it done, because the decarbonization is so sharp in that period of time. So I think that has really focused our attention on needing to achieve quite big reductions each year up to 2030 whilst growing the business. So I think that's the first part, set a short-term target and make it an ambitious one. Then I think it translates into, okay, what are the levers to be able to achieve that target? And for us, we've identified the levers, and most of it in the short term comes from upstream, from the materials, to say, okay, it takes a while to redevelop the products, so what can we do in the short term? Well, we can change the carbon profile of the materials that we source. So we work with suppliers on that, and we enter partnerships, and we work in that way. And then up for 2024 and 2025, the product design changes start coming in. So we can start designing with innovative materials, with different materials, with fewer materials, and build that into the actual product itself and achieve reductions from that part. So I think it is set the ambitious target that really focuses the minds, and then look at what are the levers to start moving, and then just get going.
Love it. And in the spirit of just getting going, I'm interested, Aditi, what can we do today? You know, finance, what can be offered in to really make this transition occur and start to move faster, and what do you have to offer the others?
So I think Alejandra really kind of very eloquently set out what's needed. On the financing, I think we think about it from three interconnected angles: more ways to finance green buildings, the right standards to define them, and also the right policies to sustain them. And all of this needs sort of the evidence-based can actually an awareness, which I think has been rapidly being accelerated around the benefits of green building, which then translates into their valuations and thinking about how they fit into portfolios. And so we're seeing that movement already in sort of the uptake for financing green buildings, and including the green construction financing. Good example, Bancolombia in Colombia is largest commercial bank, which provides over 40% of the construction finance in the country. They realized the business value of green construction and decided to grow their green buildings portfolio. They to finance the expansion, the bank issued a $117 million green bond with IFC originally, and then using the proceeds of the green bond and their own capital, they offered green construction financing at lower rates than conventional loans. And the more measurably green a project was, the lower the rate of financing. So that actually was incentivizing the green construction. Then Bancolombia issued another green loan on the back of that, green bond on the back of that, worth $100 million. And that bond was oversubscribed 2.8 times, attracted 72 domestic investors, which then lowered the cost of capital for the bank itself. And then other banks in the region have started taking note and are following suit and copying. So you're seeing that ripple effect within the financial sector taking root. And then what actually helps financiers and developers sort of scale up these green building solutions is concrete standards and policies, right, coming through from the government. So the right standards and policies send clear signal that supports future investments. And we are also seeing, you know, then the catalytic role that government can play that you were mentioning, not just on the procurement side and the market, but ensuring market data and incentives for financial actors and property developers to sort of take root in the space. They can incentivize banks to accelerate green building practices, and home improvement loans and mortgages, as well as other green financial products, can sort of actually help continue that snowball effect. So one last thing, green governments are really, really large asset owners in terms of buildings, right? Invest in buildings. So if invest in real estate. So when governments start mobilizing and shifting their own portfolio of buildings, that actually creates the technical capacity and sends the market signals that actually drives the rest of the sector to follow suit. So that, I think, is another big thing for now.
If you heard from Yves Laurent from France earlier, they're all going to get together, all the governments, so you can deliver that message. Majed, we've heard about standards and policies. You sit at really the sharp end, right, of kind of some transformational research, and how do you get that into industry? So what can we do from your vantage point to really transform quicker?
Okay, for us as CESC, we are looking for the actually we are running with the industry partner the real show at in the built environment. So we are looking for the real challenges which might delay or stop what or all initiatives you are trying to do. Built environment and construction industry, it's known of one of the lowest profitability margin across different industries. Built environment and construction industry is known that it's like the lowest in digital transformation, and they rank it like second to the lowest to the hunting. Capacity of buildings and looking for profit with the tight profitability margin. All these whatever initiatives or guidelines or things we are trying to put, it will not happen since if we are not dealing with the real reasons of stopping all initiatives. So what we are trying to do, that improving the awareness related to the different stakeholders, moving the concept of the sustainability and digital transformation from being a kind of cost to be a kind of investment, considering what we say the LCC, the life cycle costing of the building. So we design an asset for like a year. We build in 3-4 years, and we operate for 50, 70, or 100 years. So adopting this concept of LCC is going to change the whole mindset of the developer, contractor, and consultant as well. So if I have a developer, they are developing a building and selling to another operator, they see an added value of selling a sustainable building, sustainable smart building to the developer. So the operational and running costs, which almost it's 90, if you consider again the LCC, 90% of the cost is during the asset management, not during the construction. So adapting the concept related to sustainability and smart things are going to change the game drastically. If the operator themselves, the developer is the same, the operator, they will see directly the added benefits of annual saving during these things. So it's not only related to our responsibility to the environment or the concept related to the economy and society. It's about direct profitability. I'm trying to be very, very straightforward with the people that you are not. It is not sustainability and smart things is not like a luxury. Is not a fancy word to use every day. It's a business profitability added to the industry.
Efficiency, certainly an interesting one. I know Victoria's going to give us about another 4 or 5 minutes, so I want to throw it straight over to questions that you might have, comments. Again, throw in your perspective as another stakeholder with another hat on if you like. Otherwise, I'm going to take the moderator's role of throwing out under the questions my side. Any hands up? Yes, one over here.
Hi, I'm Jill Ferguson. I work at the California Public Utilities Commission. I'm also a PhD student at Stanford. I'm working on house retrofits in the U.S., mostly in low-income households, mobile homes, renters, trying to figure out how we actually finance that. Like, how do we get energy efficiency, electrification, maybe even decarb into everybody's home in a way that the onus is not on them to pay for it, and the bills actually go down. So the closest thing we've ever gotten to this, which is not fiscally sustainable in the long run, is utilities using their tariffed authority to provide upgrades to people's homes as an essential service, right? They procure demand-side resources by upgrading people's homes, but eventually they'll pass that on in the rates to people. And also, not all utilities have enough balance sheet, like PG&E, right, went bankrupt, to actually support something like this. And so I'm wondering how far you think that kind of thing might go, and then what fills in the rest of the capital stack to make decarb and like a right that everyone gets.
Who wants to take that easy one to get us started? Yep.
Thank you for the question. Definitely not an easy one. That's something that we're trying to figure out as well. I think it's important to look at also related to what I mentioned before, the scale of that civil society, or like when you look at the entire city, like the leverage that you can have on that. So thinking, for example, some recommendations that we have done in a report that we wrote last year about the right to housing and how to incorporate these like social dimensions in that. For example, could be an incentive for investors to, instead of focusing in renovations for one specific buildings and trying to extract profits out of that, to work with the government to have an entire social housing development program or retrofit program for an entire district or an entire city, in which you leverage the scale and the investor makes the profit out of the scale, instead of out of an exorbitant lucrative one project in one building. So that is one point. And also the instrument of rent caps. So when you have that type of scale, then you can actually get some lower profit margin, but using that, it's still keeping as a policy instrument the rent cap. So then the improvements that the economic benefits that come out of the retrofit are not passed on to higher rent prices. So it has to be, I think, a combination of the right policies on rent caps, and also leveraging the skill that you can have when working with the governments.
Great. I don't know if anyone else wants to take that one on. Aditi, did you have a hand up?
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I might add a quick point to this one, we are trying to adopt a concept. We call it like construction Uberization. So it's pay as you go. Whatever we are going to do as an investment, it's going to be for the end user, as like when you use Uber, you don't have to buy a car. You just call them when you have. So those things, along with the finance initiative, I think could be added value to what you have just mentioned.
Yeah. Accessibility, scale, profitability that business needs, these things exist in tension.
I mean, I completely agree with what Alejandro said about the scale, and because the investors are seeing that these buildings tend to generate higher rental income, and therefore are willing to invest in this space. From the benefit of the user, they see reduced utility bills, right? So if you are able to somehow and sort of connect that divide so that everyone kind of extracts the benefit that they would from being in that green building, and then you have, the regulatory piece that is kind of critical to drive this is also essential. I can't comment on the US side because we work in emerging markets, right? So we are working to try and identify large-scale solutions for affordable housing using the EDGE Green Building Certification in emerging markets right now. But this is not for retrofit, which is a different thing. New construction is where we have been focusing our attention, but the retrofit piece, there are New York and other cities have programs that they are putting in place, incentive structures for retrofitting green buildings and making sure that investors, owners, and operators are putting those structures in place. There may be examples out there, but that, again, New York isn't necessarily in the low-income housing space, which is the challenge here.
And I'll pass the last word to Jamie.
You mentioned you're doing a PhD, so I'll do a shout out for the Healthy Homes Barometer, which is a piece of research we pulled together. It's very European focused, but that clearly makes the it describes the impact of living in poor quality and unhealthy homes on Europeans, and then provides some financial numbers actually on the business case for solving this challenge, both from an energy and health perspective. So yeah, little shout out for that.
Yeah, and I'll do a quick shout out before. I want a soundbite, key takeaways from the session, and also today, your COP in general, in a moment from the audience, but some of the work colleagues are doing with community land trusts, new models for affordable housing, and how those provide a really exciting playground for industry innovation in an accessible, affordable way. I'm going to come, Jamie, to you first of all, very quick, under kind of 20, 30 seconds, key takeaways from you on COP so far, and how all stakeholders play their role in really driving this transformation.
Yeah, I've been hanging out here in this pavilion quite a lot, and it's always you come to COP and you see the discussions that are happening, and it's not enough, and then you come here and you see the solutions that are available, and we need to get going with. So I think that's my takeaway, and also fantastic to have human rights named on a panel. I haven't heard that yet, so good.
More of that to come.
Yes.
I completely agree on the solutions piece. I've been really fascinated by the degree of engagement and the collaboration on the public and private side, and the solutions that are being generated and in that context. And I think that's more of what we need. We cannot do, neither public sector nor private sector can do this alone, and to find the sweet spot of creating solutions that work for everyone is what I've been hearing and I want to see more of.
Wonderful.
For me, I can say clearly that we are taking things related to sustainability seriously now, especially in the region. I'm Egyptian and I live in Dubai, so we are taking it seriously in the region, and especially in the built environment, we are taking a very quick steps towards the sustainability. Especially after the COVID, I always say that the COVID it was a quite positive push to the construction industry for the technology and for the sustainability.
Thank you. And Alejandro, the last word, the human rights perspective, a key one.
Yeah, thanks. I think key takeaways from this session and from the COP so far, it's been this openness to start talking more about human rights, about the social issues. So that has been very inspiring and rewarding for us. I think it's, the one point that I wanted to make is that we speak so much about the climate transition, but we cannot have a climate transition that is not just, that is not based, that is inclusive, based on human rights. So we really need to emphasize that for the next COP and all the work that is in between in these years. And just to say a word on the just transition is usually associated with workers, thanks to the work of the ILO, but it's important to expand this concept for tenants and the local communities, for workers down the supply chain as well, indigenous peoples that might be affected with extractive industries, ocean communities. So there's a lot of other affected groups that we need to keep on mind and be aware of the rights of them. So thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak about these important topics and to contribute to the session.
No better last word, so I will leave them with you, and I'd ask you all to thank our audience, and I'll hand back.